My name is Brian Alderman. We're going to talk about managing data recovery in SharePoint 2013. We're going to talk about what's available to us in the SharePoint 2013 world, not any third-party tools, not in the cloud per se. I just found out, some gentleman just was kind enough to ask, like, how's this different than the one that Eric's doing upstairs in the Azure room? Because there's one in the Azure. Oh, I better not say anything. You guys will leave. So anyway, yeah, there's nothing else going on. This is the only session you want to be in. So we're going to talk about managing data recovery and avoiding RPEs. Anybody heard of an RPE? What is that? Resume producing event. Exactly. What we don't want to do is make a mistake where your boss comes in and allows you to fix what you just broke because you didn't document something or you didn't weren't testing your backups. That's the key thing. And they let you fix that, and then they say, by the way, there's this little white box next to your desk. Everything that's yours, go ahead and put that in that box, and then swing by my office and we'll have one last chat. So that's a resume producing event. So throughout this session, I want to give you ideas on how to avoid RPEs, or resume producing events. Again, my name is Brian Alderman. I've been an MCT for about 20 years. It's 20 years, I don't know to the date, but this will be my 20th year. I began in 1995. I'm an author of a couple books. You see at the bottom here. I speak all over the world, mostly in the United States because I'm from over in the western part of the United States, but I get to speak everywhere. I've been in Milan, I've been over in Okinawa, I've been over in Madrid. So I enjoy travel, as it says towards the bottom. So I get to travel and help people out as well. If you have any questions after you leave me today, my email address is brian.alderman@cbtnuggets.com. That's the company I work for full-time. And what I do is I create training videos for them, up to about 15, 20-minute nuggets of content. So I've got a 70-346 out there in case anybody's looking for information on how to prepare for that exam. Just finished 70-347. There's a 331 and 332 exam out there. So if you want to get your MCSE for SharePoint, you need those 4 exams. Check out cbtnuggets.com. It's 7 days. You probably can't do this in 7 days, but you get a 7-day free trial if you want to just see what it's like and just test the waters and see if it's something that you're interested in doing. And that's just Microsoft. They do VMware, they do Cisco, they do project management, they do all sorts of CompTIA, they do everything. There's content for every type of technology that you're looking for. And instead of spending, sitting in front of somebody for 3 hours, we do it in 20-minute chunks, around 20-minute chunks. Sometimes I babble too much, and it takes a little bit longer than that. Twitter, if you want to follow me on Twitter, my handle is Brian Alderman. I don't tweet when I'm going to the bathroom or what I'm eating or anything like that. It's mostly what I'm doing for presentations or blog articles or anything like that I'm writing out there. So you can check that out. Now, I have my own company called MicroTechPoint, and that's where I do all my writing from and my speaking from. So if you want to follow me, I've also got a handle called MicroTechPoint, but if you follow me on Alderman, you'll find everything else I'm doing. But more importantly in there is Brian's blog, and so there'll be a couple items I'll talk about today. So check out my blog, and the steps for actually performing those tasks will be on my blog. So that's one of the reasons I'm bringing up that site for you as well. So I co-authored the Microsoft Press SharePoint 2010 Administrator Companion, and then I also co-authored the SharePoint 2013 Administration Inside Out. Normally I bring copies of my books with me so I can sign them to a couple of the attendees, but I flew over here to Ireland for 3 days, then here, and then to Paris, so I just didn't have room in my suitcase for books. So they didn't make it over here this time. But if you go to Amazon.com, if you're looking for a 2013 book, if you go to Amazon.com or the 2010, they're available up there still. Because 2016, as you know, you've all probably heard, it's been announced there will be an on-prem 2016. But it's probably going to be Q2 of next year it'll be Q3 of this year before we see beta bits, and Q2 of next year before it's RTM. So just to give you a heads up about that. So I live in the United States. I grew up in a little state called Vermont up here. That's a state up there. So for those of you that are not familiar with there, I have to tell people on the west side of the country that I'm from Vermont, which is a state, because I got into a cab in California once, and they asked where I was from. I said Vermont. They said, what state is that in? So it's small enough state, but not small enough for people not to realize it's a state. Then I moved to Colorado Springs, which is in Colorado and about midway across the country. Still too much snow. So then I moved down to Arizona where we don't see snow unless we want to drive a couple hours up into Flagstaff. So when I was in Vermont, this is my mom, dad, and me. I lived in a town called Mullet Ville. It's actually called Milton, but I renamed it to Mullet Ville. And the thing that's important about this slide is this is me before I met SharePoint. See all the hair? Okay, so how many people had hair before they got into SharePoint? Okay, quite a few of us. This is what SharePoint. So if you're new to SharePoint, it's not too late to leave. Okay, don't leave the session. Just going to get out of SharePoint. Because this is what's going to happen to you after you spend some time in SharePoint. I just love that picture, and I had to get it in here somehow. Golf. I love to play golf. I suck at it, but I love to play when I'm in Arizona. That's why I moved there. And Arizona greens are a little bit more forgiving, if you haven't noticed the cup size in this one. So that's always a good thing. You can chip in pretty much from anywhere. I love the fact that this guy's not taking any chances. He's lining up his putt. So apparently he's been on the 19th hole a little bit too long, because if he's going to line that one up, there's obviously a problem with his golf game. At least I can chip mine in from that far out. So enjoy the game of golf. Do you guys golf much out here? Anybody, any golfers in here? A couple of you? Okay, good. Yeah, it's a great game, especially that little cart that drives you around. It's got those little bottles of stuff in it. That's my favorite hole. Okay, what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about different components of the SharePoint environment that we need to be concerned with when we're talking about data recovery. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some of the tools that we have. Again, this is out-of-the-box content. I'll mention the fact there are third-party tools, but what I'm going to show you is what you can do out of the box. We'll demo what your end users can do with recovery tools, and then we'll take a look at SharePoint recovery tools that we'll use as farm administrators, and then we'll go in and explore what's going on with the backup restore environment in SharePoint 2013, and then we'll wrap it up with some best practices. How many people in here are farm administrators? Beauteous. How many people are running SharePoint 2013, full on 2013? 2010 still out there? Quite a few, good. 2007. Wow, that's more than I've said. 2003. Good, okay, good. So 2003 to 2007 was huge. 7 to 10 was huge. 10 to 13 was, yeah, it's going to, you know, it was different. But I think the bigger jump was 7 to 10 and 10 to 13. So I'm sorry, 3 to 7 and 7 to 10. So, okay, let's get started. This is a slide I put together. I had some animations, and they started getting hosed on me, so I left it alone here. I forgot my pen, but let me see if I can do this here with my finger. It's not going to be quite what I wanted to do here. But, let's see here. So what we're going to talk about here, this side over here is all Squeal or SQL Server. And over here is where our SharePoint 2013 farm is. And whenever we create a farm, when we spin up a farm or we install it, we automatically get a web app. That web app is the central admin web app that we use. So that guy right here is hanging out right here. And every web app has, there's supposed to be the word site collection. I can't see it on my screen, but that's supposed to say site collection. I don't know what happened to that thing. And then every web app gets a site collection, and then within there you have subsites, lists, and libraries. So as a farm administrator, we're responsible for all of this. I mean, all of this in the square. All of this is us that we are responsible for. Now, if we have a DBA, so is anybody a SQL Server DBA as well as a farm administrator? So a lot of you have, and they pay you double the amount of money, right? No, I didn't think so, yeah. If they were, I wanted to know who it was. But so some of you are responsible for the side over here as well as the square in the middle. So what we're going to talk about is ways for us to kind of address from the farm level down to a list and item and document level, and even talk about what's going on in the Squeal world, SQL Server world, that we can manage in there as well. So these are the different components that we're responsible for. Now, the piece in the middle right here, if we get down to even the sub-site level, this guy right here, our users can be responsible for that depending on what we've set up for them. So we'll talk about some of the tasks that they can perform, and then it just becomes a role for us to educate them on how to use those tools. Because if we can educate them, there's a few less calls into the help desk that we have to worry about when we can be worrying about bigger problems like resume producing events and how to avoid those guys. So we want to be careful about that. And again, we're going to talk about these different components as we go through this demonstration. So we've got some data recovery tools out of the box. The first one we're going to look at are the recycle bins. Everybody know there's two-stage recycle bins available in SharePoint 2013, started in 2010 actually. And we're going to look at that. That's my first demo, is how we can use those recycle bins, and more importantly, how we can train our end users to use those recycle bins. So that way we're not worried about trying to recover a document that was just deleted yesterday because they're not familiar with the recycle bin. I'll show you a nice cool trick on jokes, and you can play with your users with that as well. So we'll look at recycle bins. We'll then look at some of the backup and restore options that we have available in SharePoint. All right, we have 3 tools out of the box. The first one being central admin. So we can go into the backup and restore, and that's going to be my second demo, what we can do inside of there. Another one is PowerShell. Everybody PowerShell experts in here yet? I'm not going to raise my hand. Everybody familiar with PowerShell, at least? Okay, good. And then the third tool is STS-ADM. Now, honestly, who's still using STS-ADM? Because we have scripts out there. They're not broken. So we don't need to get rid of STS-ADM until Microsoft says we're going to discontinue that. We're going to yank that command out. It will never, ever, ever work again. Microsoft's not probably going to do that. So if you have scripts out there from 2010 and they're working perfectly with STS-ADM, that's cool. But I wouldn't build anything else out with STS-ADM, and I would dig into some PowerShell and get to understand that. Now, the other thing we can look at is where we step over the DBA world is performing SQL Server backups and restores. Because there's some things that they can do better than us. I mean, that's their job, or jobs if you're wearing two hats. And we can allow them and talk with them about performing database backups for us. And that's another tool that we have available to us. And then, of course, there are third-party tools that several of the SharePoint vendors already have out there that will allow you to back up down to an individual document and restore that individual document if you want to do so. But I'm going to focus on the first three sets of tools that are available to us out of the box. The first one is the first stage user recycle bin. So any user can delete a document or a list or a library, and for up to 30 days, they can go into their recycle bin and recover that. Now, a lot of users don't know that, and it's our job as administrators to make sure they do understand that. Again, that'll save a half a dozen at least phone calls a week because, oh, I accidentally deleted this document or a list or a library, and now I can't get to it. Well, they can, they just don't know how to get to it. So we're going to look at that one. The second thing we have is a second stage recycle bin. And the second stage recycle bin is really a site collection recycle bin. And this is the one you can have fun with your end users with, and I'll show you how to do that when we get in there. I mean, it's a valid tool as well, but it's going to also be a kind of a year-round April Fool's joke. So we'll look at what happens in the second stage recycle bin, because with the second stage recycle bin, for those of you running SharePoint 2010, if you have Service Pack 1 or later on it, you can now delete a sub-site, and that second stage recycle bin will pick up that sub-site. Prior to Service Pack 1 in 2010, we couldn't do that. In fact, there was a program out in Codeplex that I would actually download and install that allowed me to recover sub-sites. So we'll look at how we can do that one as well. Within there, we can actually work with lists of libraries, items, and documents as well as sub-sites. So that's the next piece that we're going to go look at, is what we can do to help our users learn or use, no, I don't need those, thank you, is to learn the end user piece of the recycle bins. So I'm in here in my central admin on the main page. I only have a yellow bar. Does everybody know how to fix, so this yellow bar, what does that mean? It's everything's what? Everything's fine. If it's pinkish, we got more problems. But the key thing about here is view these issues. Right now, because I just spun this image up, I only have one problem, and that's because my current server running is low, is on memory. I've had it where there's dozens of things. I'm just going to show you. So I don't care if you have 1 or 20 things in here. It's very, very easy to fix these problems. A lot of people make it too complicated. So let's pretend there's 20 items in here. So what we do to fix them, we come in here, we click this checkbox. Now all 20 items are selected. We go to items, and we go to delete item, and then we do an OK. Okay? So after we do that, then we go back to central admin, and everything's fixed. All right? So I don't know why people make a big deal about, oh, I got to go fix these 20 items. It's that easy to fix that thing, especially if your manager's coming in for a quick meeting. You want to pop up central admin, see? No pink bar, no yellow bar, everything's perfect. So I'll try to quickly get through this demo before our timer job runs and repopulates that. But okay, so that's one little trick that you can do. So we can do that, and then, oh, I got to spin up CBT nuggets here. I forgot to log in over here. So we can do that as a quick fix for that. But what we're going to look at now is what we can do from an end user's perspective and educate our end users on recovering documents themselves. I'm going to go in. I think my company is called, I think this one is administrator. And it's always good to log in as administrator all the time. We know that's not true. And make sure, what's the most popular Microsoft password? How do you spell it, though? Capital P, @ SSW0RD1. Everybody got that one? Okay, be careful. because especially when you're in cloud, people, friends, other speaker friends, have gone in and changed the password prior to demos to mess with people. And then we sitting in the audience like, oh, by the way, it's now password 2 or something like that. Yeah, if you're in an environment that's accessible by others, make sure you kind of tweak, get away from that default password that we're so comfortable using. By the way, mine is the default password of capital P SSW0D. But I'm not, yeah, okay, well, we're not going to worry about that right now. But so I'm just going to log in here. I normally have this one logged in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you as an end user. I'm going to pretend I'm going to, does anybody know what a normal end user is? Anybody met a normal end user? Okay, me either. Okay. Because you read the documentation, they'll say, yeah, a normal end user would do this, but I've yet to really meet a normal end user, so just wonder if anyone's met one. So what we're going to do is look at what a normal end user would do if they decide to delete a document and how they can recover it, or if they decide to delete a list or library and how they can recover that. So we're in our CBT Nuggets world, and you'll see down here, we've got a folder. So this was applicable to a document or a folder. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to go to this ellipsis DLEO here, and this ellipsis DLEO here, and then we're going to delete this. And then we're going to go ahead and do an OK. And now you're going to see that that personal folder is going to be toast, and it no longer shows on this screen here. Now, is it really toast? It's actually in my recycle bin, my end user recycle bin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to our COG or site actions, site settings. Actually, I'm going to go to site contents. And in here, when you get into site contents, we're going to see that we have our recycle bin right here. So I'm going to click on that recycle bin, and you're going to see there's my personal folder that I just deleted. Okay? Now, how long, does anybody know how long that folder will hang out there? 30 days, exactly. So for 30 days, it can hang out here. Now, some people like myself, before I go to happy hour on Friday night and Thursday night, no, just Friday night, we'll work out now, I need to empty my recycle bin or I'm not going to sleep. So let's say I just delete this on a Monday. So 5 days later, Friday night before I leave for happy hour, I have to come in here and I have to delete this. So I have to make sure my recycle bin is empty so I'll be able to sleep and drink comfortably. So I'm going to just highlight everything that's in there, and I'm going to delete the selection, and then I'm going to do an OK. So now, thank goodness my recycle bin is empty, all right? So that was 5 days I just burnt up of 30 days. So what happened to those 2 documents or that folder and document I just deleted? Second stage. Okay, so second stage recycle bin. Everyone's familiar with that. How long will it hang out in the second stage recycle bin? 50%? I'm sorry. 30 days also? 90 days. Do I hear 100, 120, 160? What are we bidding at? I don't have anything up for auction, but no, it's actually 30 days total. So I already burnt 5 of those 30 days in my recycle bin as the end user. So only for 25 more days will it hang out in that second stage recycle bin. Okay? So often people, again, if you look up the documentation, on some of the wording that Microsoft uses is probably not as clear as it could be. This is one of those examples where that's a little bit misleading. So now we're going to go in. So now, on Friday, I go in, I toast it, I drink all weekend, I come back to work on Monday, I realize I shouldn't have deleted that folder. So now I've toasted it out of my recycle bin. I need to go buy my site collection administrator beer in order to get that folder back. Okay? So all they're going to do is they're going to go up as a site collection administrator. So don't make them, so it's not like they have to do a lot. They're going to go here. They're going to do the site contents. And then they're going to go down to, I'm sorry, my bad. Here's site settings. And then we're going to go down to site collection administrator. Here's my second stage recycle bin. And I'm going to click on that. And here's my personnel folder that I just created. Now, this is the personnel folder. My default view over here is the end user recycle bin. So this is not even the one I was just looking at. This is a user called Jessica. So what I want to see is those items that were deleted, the ones I just deleted, those are in this view here called deleted from end user recycle bin. These are the 2 documents I just deleted from my recycle bin. These are the ones that will hang out for another 25 days based on the fact that I deleted them on Monday. 5 days went by in my recycle bin. We have 25 left. All right. This is where you can mess with your users. Yes, sir?
The previous folder showed Jessica's file deleted. It was in 2014. It's still in there.
So back here. Oh, yeah, deleted 7/21, yeah, July of 2014. There's a setting that you can configure. I didn't think I did that on this one where it doesn't purge those out until I make it. So I probably messed with that. Good catch. Thank you very much. If you know what? Just you did such a great job. I'm going to get you some free popcorn as soon as you come out the door to the left, or cotton candy, whatever you want. There's ice cream was good. Yeah, definitely. All right. So yeah, good catch on that. So let's go to our deleted from end user recycle bin. So now I'm the OCD guy. So on Monday I deleted something. Friday I deleted it. This is where you mess with your users. Because what you're going to do as a site collection administrator to drive people crazy, you're just going to come back here, and you're going to grab this guy here and this guy here, and you're going to do the restore selection, and we're going to do an OK on these. And it's going to restore those right back to the location they were before. So I'm going to go back to CBT Nuggets main page, and you're going to see my personal versus personnel, and my documents are there. So if you really want to mess with someone, let them delete it, let them delete it, send it to the second stage recycle bin, then you restore it for them. Because it doesn't change any of the properties as to when it was deleted, when it was last modified. So like, man, I'm pretty sure I deleted that last week. I'll delete it again. You just keep doing that over and over again until they quit, pretty much. Because eventually they're like, this SharePoint's just driving me crazy. I can't take it anymore, and they'll walk out. So, but you can do that. So the cool thing, a couple things to know. We can also do this with a subsite. So if we drill into our site content here, we can go down and grab a subsite. I think I have one already created. Yeah, right here. We'll click on that. And this is, again, SharePoint 2010 Service Pack 1 or greater is where this works. So this is guy here. We'll go to Site Actions and Site Settings, and we'll dig into delete this site. And it's sure you want to delete it. We'll do a delete. We'll do an OK. And that automatically goes to our second stage recycle bin. And we can do the same thing there. We'll just go back to CBT Nuggets, and we'll go back to Site Actions and Site Content, or Site Settings, excuse me, because we have to go to the second stage recycle bin right here. And you're going to see that if we go to deleted from end user recycle bin, so the site collection, or site settings, subsites, excuse me, don't go into this view here of end user because they never hit there. They're going to be over here. Here's my subsite that we just deleted. And again, we can mess with them by just doing a quick check and restore. It'll bring that back. Now, if you're using list, libraries, or subsites, and they happen to be in the top navigation bar or the quick launch bar, the thing that doesn't happen when you restore those is they don't end back up in the navigation bars. Okay, so if you go out there and you delete a library and you bring it back with the restore options, either operation, whether the site collection or the first stage or the second stage recycle bin, the default, or by default, it's not going to end back up on that top link bar or the quick launch bar, wherever they were initially. You need to go and open that library up or open that subsite up and put it back on the navigation piece that you want it on. All right, so that's how you mess with users. Let's go back out to a couple slides here before we come back in and explore. All right, some backup tools that we have available to us. We have the central admin. We talked about that. We also have PowerShell. Now, most of us are learning with PowerShell. What's the beauty of PowerShell? So if I want to do a backup every weekend, why would I use PowerShell over central admin? Central admin's click, click, click. Sorry? You can schedule it. You can script it and you can schedule it. Now, unless you get paid by the hour, where it's good to wake up at 2 o'clock every night and log in, and you're going to get paid for that, then you use central admin. But most likely we don't, so what we want to do is be able to script it and schedule it using PowerShell. And if you use PowerShell, there's really only 4 commands I need to know. Now, there's some parameters along with those, but there's only 4 PowerShell commands that I need to know. The first one is going to be the backup-sp farm, and this switches. Do I want the entire farm? Do I want a specific service app? Do I want a specific web app? Do I want a content database or a couple content databases? And I can choose when I do that. Now, there's a second command that's specifically for the configuration database, and that is backup-sp configuration database. Pretty intuitive. The third one is backup sp site. So if you've worked, how many people have worked with PowerShell to know that if you see sp site, it's not a subsite, it's a site collection, okay? And sp web is your subsites. I don't know how they did that. They were drinking or smoking up in Redmond, but they came up with the idea sp site is a site collection, and the SP web is a subsite. So get used to those 2 terms, and then you can write scripts. Now, anything below a subsite, site collection, excuse me, you now switch from the backup command to the export command. So after that point, you switch from a backup to an export command. That's where you can work with lists, libraries, and subsites there. Now, of course, for those of you that are hung on to STS-ADM, I can say at this point, because there's 4 PowerShell commands we need to know. And in STS-ADM, there's only 2 I need to know. That's for backup and export as well. So there's only 2 commands you need to know with your STS-ADM. Like I said, if your scripts are already out there, let them rock. I wouldn't write anything else in STS-ADM. I would definitely look at the PowerShell for that. So that's all we need, 4 PowerShell commands to back up any component or the entire farm. And for the STS-ADM, there's only 2 commands we need to know. Now, if we go to restore, we have similar options. Central admin, and then we have PowerShell for that. And in here, we only have 3 commands. They got rid of these. There's no such thing as restore-sp configuration database. It's a switch that goes with the restore sp farm. So yeah, there's actually a switch called configuration database only or something like that. So there's only 3 commands you need to know within PowerShell to restore any component of your farm or your entire farm. And then we do a restore for SP site for our site collections, and then we switch to an import versus an export if we're going to use PowerShell for performing, for doing a restore operation at any level within the farm. And of course, we have STS-ADM. We have the -O for restore, and then the import. So if you think about it, if we want to script any of our content out to back it up, there's 4, 7, really there's only 9 commands I need to know. All right, I only need to know 4 PowerShells for backups, and that's any component, 3 for restore PowerShell, and then 2 for the backup and restore, backup and export, and then 2 for the restore and import. So I think that's actually 11, but I wasn't doing the math. So it's pretty straightforward to script these using this content here. Okay, so let's go ahead and explore some of these options inside of Central Admin. And we're going to go back to our image here and into Central Admin. So we have this category over here called Backup and Restore. And up in here we have Perform a Backup. And so we have 2 categories. Let's start at that one. We have Perform a Backup and Restore for the farm, or we have the granular backup that was introduced in 2010. So let's talk about this category here first, Perform a Backup. So I'm going to click on Perform a Backup. And in here I can choose what component, very similar to what I can with PowerShell, what component I want to back up. Now I've got a question for you. How many people have been working with Microsoft for more than 3 years? Any product in Microsoft? All right. So normally what happens, so when you see the screen, if you haven't been on the screen before, what does this checkbox mean right here? If I want to back up settings, what does that mean right there? If I see a checkbox on any Microsoft application, what does that mean? Sorry? I can include it, but what does a checkbox mean versus a radio button? Multiple, right? This is the only spot I've seen in Microsoft World that's not true. And I wish they'd fix. So let's go down to, let's say, our web apps. I want to back up the CBT Nuggets web app and my managed metadata service. Nope, it's one or the other. Well, that's not fair. It's a checkbox. I go inside of CBT Nuggets. Let's say I have multiple databases. I can choose CBT Nuggets here, or if there's another database right here. Bottom line is, it's one choice. I don't know why they've done that with the checkboxes. So when you come in here, in the Central Admin, you have to choose the highest component involved. So if I wanted to back up just one database of CBT Nuggets web application, I can't do that. Or 2 of the databases, I can't do 2 of the 3. I would have to back up the entire CBT Nuggets web app in order to back up those 1, 2, or 3 databases associated with that. So just a weird situation that Microsoft's created when we're all used to it. Everyone said, yeah, that means we're going to be doing, multiple items. That's because this is within it. So let me just clear this. As soon as I click that one, every component gets selected. But I can't select it individually, okay? So be aware of that. So that's the first screen. It's choose the component that you want to back up, and it's a single component. So choose the choose it at the highest level in that area. After we hit next, the next question is, do we want to do a full or differential? So a full means it's going to back up absolutely everything. Differential means it's going to back up just the changes since the last time we did a full backup. All right, and it's cumulative. We're going to talk about that in a slide in the upcoming, later on in the session. It comes up here and says, where do you want to back it up to? SQL and SQL backups. Now, my operating system is on the C drive. And by default, when you install SharePoint, all the SharePoint components go on the C drive. If anybody's installed SQL Server, all of the components of SQL Server go on the C drive. Data file, the log file, all the files associated with SQL Server, they're all on the C drive. So they have my philosophy. Put everything on the C drive so you don't have to worry about finding it. If you start scouting around the D drive and the F drive and the L drive, you have to figure out where everything is. So put everything on the C drive, so if you go on vacation, no one's going to bother you. Is that a good strategy? Please say no. Thank you. Okay. So by default, because this is a virtual image, I only have one drive. So that's the only reason I have my backups on the C drive. But normally you would use a UNC name and put it out in a file share somewhere. But that's my default setting. I can override that here, and then I can start the backup. Now, I don't have enough power on this image to start a backup, but that's the steps. That's how easy it would be for me. Choose the component on screen 1, choose the type of backup on screen 2, the location on screen 3. 3 clicks, we have a backup going. So we can do that very easily in here, but we're not going to go there. We're going to cancel this out because there's more I want to talk about here. Let's go back up and restore again. And this is where I would do a restore. Same here, I would click on restore. I would choose the option or the item I want to restore, and I can expand to get more info. I want to show you here, by default, the location where I specified the backup is going to be in here. And then for every major component, which is a site collection or higher, everywhere we use the backup command, we get a different folder assigned. So notice we have SPBR000. The next time I back up a farm or a site collection or a web app, it's going to be SPBR001, and then 002, 003. It'll keep incrementing. Those are all special folders, separate folders in that SQL SQL backups. So let's go ahead and cancel on that. Where I configure that is right here, configure backup settings. So right here is where I went in and specified where I want my backups to go to by default. You can specify that for your individual settings. And then above that are the number of threads used to do a backup and the number of threads used to do a restore. This can help you with, let's say we're running this backup. It's a 60 gig backup. To keep my math simple, because I went to Café de Paris last night, let's say it's 60 gigs and it's taking 6 hours. And it's using 3 threads by default. Well, what if I increase those 3 threads to 6 threads? What's going to happen? I'm writing the content out 2 times as fast, so now it should go from 6 hours down to 3 hours. Now, there's going to be a performance hit, so if you're running this during the day, I wouldn't change those thread options. But if you're running this at night, nothing else is going on, you could actually expedite to how fast that item is backed up by increasing the number of threads. By the way, all of these switches are available with STS-ADM and with PowerShell. Same with the restore. Let's say we've lost our system. We're in deep doo-doo if we don't get this thing fixed. We need to restore this as quickly as possible. There's nothing else going on in that server. So what we can do, either with PowerShell, STS-ADM, or Central Admin, is let's bump up our restore threads from 3 to 6. Now it's going to write back that content 2 times as fast. So we can control the speed of these backups and restores by looking at these threads or managing these threads here. The default is 3, but you can go as high as 10. I wouldn't push it that far, but you can actually go up to as high as 10. I bumped it up to 6 to try to expedite my backups and restores. This brings up backup and restore history, and this is the restore status, job status. You can click on that page once you kick off a backup or a restore. It's just going to refresh, I think it's every 60 seconds, and let you know how that backup is going. All right, so that's for our farm or our web app or our service app or content databases. If we drill down to this category here, it's granular backups. And here we have perform a site collection backup. And what's the command for a site collection backup? A PowerShell? SP site, backup-SP site. All right, good job. And then right down here, we have a file name. Make sure you have the right site collection here. You drop this down and drill in the site collection. File name here. And notice by default, they're suggesting a .bak when we're doing a backup. Just a suggestion, you can call it whatever you want here. And then I would specify the file name for that site collection, and I would kick that off here. Now let me cancel on this and jump into, I didn't want to jump, ooh, something's back. I hope my manager's not in here. Okay. So backup and restore here. And then export a site or list. We click on that guy here. And here's where I can drill down into a site collection, a subsite, and out to a list. And I scroll down, file name. Notice now, being we're using the export command, the default file extension is .cmp. Just for the record, again, we can override that. The cool thing about this, we can grab security full security for these items. And we can actually come down here and choose what we want to export. Maybe I only want to export the most current version. Or I want to export all versions. So if I got 50 copies of that and 35 of them are minor versions, all of that's going to come over. I probably don't want to do that. I probably don't need to do that if I'm just trying to replicate this environment to a dev environment, for instance, so the devs can go out there and break stuff. Fix stuff for us. And then we have the last major content, current version, last major, last minor. So we have options when we're looking at list and libraries as to what we want to back up, or export, excuse me, in this term. Notice what's not here. I don't know why it keeps kicking me all the way back out there. So this is exporting. This is a backup. Notice there's nothing here about importing a site or list. So if you're going to export using central admin, you still need to use PowerShell or STS-ADM to import that content. Okay? Same with a site collection backup. We need to use a command line feature to import that content. There's not an import feature from inside of here. This is pretty slick. We covered data from an unattached content database. Let's say I deleted a document 2 years ago. It was the end, or last year. It was the end of the fiscal year, so it was a budget document, and I toasted that, and my SQL Server DBA has taken that database and taken it offline, and I realized I need that document because now I need to do this year's, and I want to kind of compare this year's end-of-year budget to last year's. Well, what we can do is call our SQL Server DBA, and by the way, I haven't said this in this session yet, get to know your SQL Server DBA, take them to lunch or get them drunk once a month, all right, because you're going to need them on your side. You're going to need to know what they're doing, because there's going to be certain things that you're going to want. And if you're on their side versus, you guys may not get along as well, it's going to be a little bit more challenging for you. So I'm going to call them up and say, look, we had a couple shots of tequila last week. Don't forget, I was going to ask you a favor. The favor is I need a database from last June restored for me. They're going to go out. Doesn't matter what instance of SQL Server. That's why they call it unattached content database. They can install it to a SQL Server Express for all we care. They'll install that database. They'll remind me what the name of that database is. I can now connect to that database and drill down into that database to find the document that I'm trying to recover. So I can browse the content. I can back up an entire site collection from that database, or I can export a site or list from that database and then drill in and find that document and re-upload it. Okay, so we do have granular backups and restored built into our SharePoint environment. But again, you've got to be friends with your database administrator to make that happen. And then there's just this backup job status here. So this is good here. Let's go back out to our image, or out to our slide deck, actually. Come up here. This is running better than yesterday. Yesterday I couldn't get I'd click and go to the bathroom and come back. It still wasn't there. Okay, so we're good here. So SQL Server backups and restores. Let's talk about these a little bit more here. So farm configuration database, we saw a PowerShell command specifically for farm configuration. We also have a checkbox inside of central admin for farm configuration. We may want to back up the central admin database. Now, when you install SharePoint, what's normally the problem with the central admin content database? A challenge. We won't say problem. The GUID. Now, by the way, everywhere I go, I do a show of hands of whether you say GUID or GWID. I was super impressed. Most people use GUIDs around here. In some parts of the United States, the West Coast, they call it GWIDs. I think they try to make everything faster over there. So GWIDs. But yes, it's got a huge GUID on it. If you hit my microtechpoint.com, Brian's blog site, I have a step-by-step on how to rename the central admin database to get rid of the GUID, if you want to do that. So microtechpoint.com and then Brian's blog. Content databases, service and web app databases. I have yet another article on my blog site, because they're separate steps, on how to rename content databases. If you spun up a web application and you don't like the name of the database, or got a GWID or GUID in there, you can rename that, and I have the step-by-step in there as well. All right, so you can check that out. Service applications, I don't have an article on, but MSDN or TechNet has an article, because each service application is slightly different because of what they're performing. Like Search has 4 databases. User Profile Service has 3. Check those out and see what you can do to rename them. Because if you've installed SharePoint 2013 and you haven't used the farm configuration wizard, which you shouldn't be, even if you use, it doesn't prompt you for the database names for Search unless you use PowerShell to install it. So if you install Search using, going into Central Admin, Service Applications, New Service App, Search, it creates 4 databases, then you have no choice of what those databases are. You end up with a GUID. So there's a way to rename those. I don't have an article on that, but MSDN/TechNet has one out there for you to do that. So you may want to check that out and get those renamed. Schedule backups and maintenance tasks using SQL Database Maintenance Wizard. If you're one of those people that accidentally, or you were half asleep, and they said, hey, Brian, do you want to do that? I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. What am I going to do? I was dozing off. Oh, you just signed up to be our SharePoint admin. I'm like, oh, crap. I didn't know anything about SharePoint, let alone SQL. And then I did the two-for role, because, again, you get double the money. If you're not familiar with SQL Server and you got stuck with an instance of SQL Server, there's a database maintenance plan wizard out there under the maintenance category on the left-hand side. And you just spin that up. It'll walk you through. How many databases do you have? How often do you want to back them up? What kind of reports do you want to generate? How often do you want to generate, do what's called a DBCC check DB, check the integrity of the database? How often do you want when do you want to delete those backups? The types of backups. When do you want to delete reports? It's a step-by-step, at least to get something going for you to make sure that you have backups created for you. So that's one thing I suggest. The next thing is manually create jobs to perform backups. So that's my point on using PowerShell versus Central Admin. You can create a job to go out and back up your content, and you don't have to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning every night to perform that backup. Now this one's one of my favorites. So you're backing up your content. You're a SQL DBA or you're a SharePoint. So let's say we've got our production area right here in this room, sitting right there. We've got 3 servers, 2 web front-end servers. We've got our application server. We've got a single application server. We've got 2 Squeal servers over there. And then over here's our backup environment. Okay, so we've got 100 feet between the 2 of them. So that's good enough, right? So all my production is right there. My backups are right here. So the location of my backups are close enough, so if I need to do a recovery, I can do a fairly quick recovery. Is that sufficient enough for me just to say, I'm good? You're shaking your head no. Why? Yeah, what if something happens to location? So what if someone walks in with a couple cigarettes and those sprinkler heads go off? You've lost both environments. Now, it gets worse than that. So let's take it out to the Midwest of the United States. Right down the middle, they call that Tornado Valley. All right, so we're not even worried about a building. Now we're talking about a county away we might want a copy of our backups. California is supposed to fall off into the ocean some point. We've been hearing that. So that's going to happen. Who knows? Could be tomorrow, but pretend I didn't say that. But so if that falls off the ocean, you've got San Francisco all the way down to earthquakes. They're earthquake prone over there. So you've got one up in San Diego, one up in San Francisco, and there's an earthquake that happens to go down through there. So the location of your backups, you have to really think about any risks, natural disaster risks that are involved, and not just I'm backing them up to my file share that's in the next room. That might be good for a quick recovery, but you should have a third copy somewhere, and you got to think about where you are in the country or in the world to say that third copy might be in a completely different country. Might be across the Atlantic Ocean or the Pacific Ocean to make sure I always have another copy somewhere. Okay, so be careful about when you're going through the backups. Make sure you understand it's important to consider where those backups are. Keep one local for those quick recoveries. But a bigger disaster, you have to be careful because you want something remote, and that remote is defined by where you are in the world to be able to grab that backup. So one of the big things I always run into, and it's for those of you that sat my SQL session, yes, up to SQL session, this is the same. How many people sat that yesterday? Ooh, you guys can take about a 10-minute power nap if you need one. Because we're going to go through that again, or if you have any questions since yesterday, we're going to talk about, you can bring those up now. One of the challenges we always run into, I've seen this gazillions of times, a 385 megabyte MDF file, master data file, and a 12 gigabyte log file. So if you haven't seen that, you will. It will happen if you haven't seen it. How many people have seen it? Let's do it that way first. Okay, for those of you who didn't raise your hand, it's coming. Okay, it will happen. Okay, so you have something to look forward to. But the good thing that will be different is you'll be ready for after this session. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at, actually, let's start with this. If you go out and search and say, I have a problem. I've got my MDF files, which are so big. I've got my transaction logs, which are this big. People are going to be I'll be polite, are goofy enough to say, just put your databases in simple recovery model, okay? Because what that means is every 60 seconds when it writes, every insert, update, or delete we do into a list or library in SharePoint is first written to SQL Server LDF file. Let's see if I put the slide in here. I didn't, okay. It's first written to an LDF file, transaction log file, and then 60 seconds later there's a process built into SQL Server called a checkpoint, and that is written to the MDF file. Okay, so we have our MDF file over in this physical drive here, LDF file over in this file drive here. So if we have a problem with the MDF file, we've got all our transactions in the LDF. Okay, so when that write occurs from the LDF to the MDF, if you put it in simple recovery model, it will flush all those transactions in the LDF that it just wrote. Granted, if you read online, it says to put it in simple recovery model. That will fix that problem. You'll never get a ginormous transaction log. But you're going to cause all sorts of other problems that we're going to walk through in the next slide. If we leave it in full recovery model, that checkpoint's going to occur every 60 seconds as it's supposed to, but now it's not going to flush that. Hence the reason we get these ginormous transaction logs. So you need to say no to simple, but we need to fix the problem of the huge transaction logs by periodically backing those up. And we're going to walk through an example of how often we can do that, or when to do that. Okay, again, apologize for those of you that were here yesterday, but maybe it'll spark questions that we didn't have yesterday. So we've talked to our DBA over a few shots of tequila, and he's explained to me that every Sunday night we do a full backup of our database, our content databases for all of our web apps in SharePoint. And with that, and that's 60 gigs. Every Sunday night, it's 60 gigs of content that's backed up. Now on Monday night, instead of backing up all 60 gigs, because only 3 gigs changed today, we're going to do what's called a differential backup. We saw that as an option inside of Central Admin. So we're going to do on Monday night, we're going to do a differential slash, I call it slash cumulative, because on Tuesday night when I do a backup, it's going to back up everything that changed on Monday. So we did a full backup on Sunday, everything that changed on Monday, and everything that changed on Tuesday. We're going to do the same thing on Wednesday. Everything that's going to, in that backup, that's going to do everything that changed on Monday, everything that's changed on Tuesday, everything that's changed on Wednesday. Why is it doing it that way? What's the primary reason for creating a backup strategy? What's ultimately what our number one goal is? Restore. Minimize the downtime and have a very efficient recovery strategy. So instead of creating transaction logs every night, I'm going to create a cumulative update, a differential backup, because all the changes from Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday are in Wednesday night. When it comes to restoring, I have two restores. The full restore from Sunday, my differential from Wednesday, because all my changes from Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So now I've gone from, instead of doing a Sunday full, Monday transaction, Tuesday transaction, Wednesday transaction, which would have been 4 restores, now I only need 2. The full from Sunday and the differential from Wednesday. Okay, so that's why we do that. That's why we're using those. Okay, so now Thursday comes along, just before happy hour, you're just ready to go out, and all of a sudden you get a warning through SQL Server, the DBA calls up, dude, we just lost your database and the MDF file. So, if I'm in simple recovery model, what am I going to do at this point with my transactions? We've got this guy from Sunday, we've got that guy from Wednesday, we've got a full day of work here. If I'm in simple recovery model, what am I going to do with that LDF file right now? Nothing. There's nothing in there. I might as well go to happy hour because there's nothing I can do. There's nothing there for me. So this is why we don't want to use simple recovery model. So because we're smart DBAs, we're going to leave it in full recovery model. This guy is going to have all of my transactions from Thursday. So what's going to be my first step? My first step is to back up the content, is to back up the information that's in this LDF file, including everything that took place Thursday. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. First step is we're going to use a backup log statement, and we're going to use this switch call with no recovery, which is tell SQL Server we're not finished. We know we've got a database down that's attached to this. The MDF is unavailable. I just need a snapshot or a copy of that right now. So we're going to use this switch and this command right here to wherever you want to back it up. Okay, now we need to restore. We want to get back to 4 o'clock on Thursday. So our recovery process is going to be this. We're going to do a restore of the full database that we took up, the backup that we took on Sunday night. Then we're going to do a restore from Wednesday night, because that includes the changes Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then we're going to do a restore of what we just backed up in step 1. And that's going to include all the options, all the transactions from Wednesday, or from Thursday, excuse me. So now we've got, and the reason I don't want simple recovery model, I could not do these 2 steps if this was empty because I'm using simple recovery model. So that's the reason I don't want you using simple recovery model, regardless of what you read online, even though I know everything on the internet is supposed to be true. So how do we avoid a ginormous transaction log? One of the problems that cause the transaction log to grow is the definition of a full backup by Microsoft. If you read it, it says something along the lines as a full backup backs up the MDF file and the transaction log file. So people assume it's backing it up, and they assume it's being truncated. And what happens, what's it mean, assume? What does that mean again? You don't have to say it, but you know what I mean, okay? So, but it's not accurate it's not exactly accurate with what they're saying. And the reason they say that is because, let's say this MDF backup on Sunday night kicks off at 5 p.m. And we'll say it takes 5 hours and ends at 10 p.m. When that kicks off at 5 p.m., there's a little check mark put in the LDF file that says backup started. And then it goes till 10 p.m. When the backup of the MDF stops, it goes back in there and says backup ended. So it's like, okay, we've got 5 hours of transactions that took place. It then goes out after the MDF backup is completed, and it grabs those 5 hours worth of transactions and it writes them to that backup file. So that's their explanation of how a backup works, a full backup works. So they aren't inaccurate by saying it's backing up the transaction log, but it's misleading because it's not truly doing a backup log statement. That's what we need to avoid those ginormous transaction logs. We have to purge that content out. So that's why people are like, oh, no, I read it online. Microsoft says they're backing up the transaction log as well. Yeah, they are, but pieces of it. And it's not doing a backup log statement. So when in this scenario is the best time for me to back up and, more importantly, truncate my transaction log? Right after the full backup. Because if I just backed up this MDF file over to a file over here, a network share, all right, I've got my production copy, I've got my backup copy right here. Those are perfectly in sync. This is the time and point where I'm least concerned about what's in my LDF file. That's a good time to purge that out. So what we're going to do is we're going to add another step into our backup job as a SQL DBA. The first step is going to do a full backup on Sunday of this file here. The second step, and you can say it this way, if step 1 is successful, then perform step 2. Step 2 is going to be this guy right here. Back up this log to anywhere you want to back it up to, but not the C drive, with an int. And now it's going to purge that out. That will never get ginormous because we're purging it out once a week. Unless you're doing a gazillion transactions, you might have to do that daily. And this with an int just says, I'm going to leave this out hanging out for a week. Next week when I do this same backup job, just overwrite whatever last week's content was. It's going to use the same exact file. It's called initialize with init. Initialize what's already out there and redo it and write over it. If we use this strategy, we'll have a recovery process for data, and we'll also avoid the ginormous transaction logs. Now you could take it to a third step and actually delete this, but I like to keep that out because there's something you can do with a transaction log backup that you can't do with other backups, and that's a point-in-time recovery, which means if I decide to go out for a liquid lunch for a couple hours, I come back at 2 o'clock, I stumble over to my machine, I start doing updates, and I messed them all up for the afternoon, they can actually back up that transaction log and then come back and say, I want to restore that transaction log, but there's a switch called stop at. Well, they saw me stumble back in at 2 p.m., so they stop at 2 p.m. Not only my transactions, but everybody else's transactions don't get restored after 2 p.m. So now I got people upset with me. So don't drink and drive. I mean, don't drink and code or work. Okay, questions on this scenario here? We have 5 minutes. We all good with this? So what do we do with simple recovery model? Always use it, right? No. Now you can use it. If you've got a QA environment or if you've got a dev environment, The devs aren't, we don't care what happens over there. They're getting their data from us. So I don't care about it in that environment, but in production, don't use simple recovery model.
Sorry, just one question.
Yes, sir.
Is it okay to use that also in your configuration database?
Is it okay to use it with your configuration database? The system database is whatever. So whatever SQL does, remember you have your own instance of SQL Server, hopefully. So like TempDB, for instance, that's in simple recovery model. I just can't recall right off the top of my head whether the config database, I think it is in simple recovery model.
That's a full, that's the massive transaction log for that one.
For your configuration database, then if it's not full recovery out of the box, then don't, I'm sorry, if it's not simple recovery out of the box, don't put it in simple recovery. Just figure out whenever you do your backup, yep, make sure you do a backup log on that periodically. And you're right, I've seen that once before at a company, and I was surprised it was a config database versus a content database. And I have seen that. So this is applicable, thanks for saying that. This is, when you get more popcorn out there, this is applicable for the config database as well. You need to back that up periodically, like you know you do. And you also need to make sure you back up the transaction log associated with that. Just put this type of strategy together, not that guy, this one back here, together for you to be able to do that. Yes, sir. TempDB is just trash. TempDB gets flushed every time you restart SQL Server, so you'll never have to worry about Temp. TempDB is a system database that's only used if I've got 5,000 items in a list and it needs to store that somewhere to slice and dice that content because I want to see it chronologically or alphabetized. It sticks it in a table in TempDB, slices and dices it, and brings that list back to me. That gets flushed every time you turn around. Every time you restart SQL Server, that's toast. It's like memory if you reboot your system. Another question, you had a question earlier. What if I'm already here? So I'm already in a situation, Brian, when I go back to the office tomorrow, I know I've got a 12 gigabyte LDF file and a 400 megabyte MDF file. I'm pretty sure I had this on my blog. And there's steps you need to, I just told you not to ever put it in simple recovery model. To fix that, we've got to tell SQL Server, I know it says it's 12 gigs. It's probably only using 2 gig in there. So we need to shrink that file down. So there's steps. I'm pretty sure if not, email me, brian.alderman@cbtnuggets.com, that you need to take to flush that and reduce that. So I believe it's put it in simple recovery model. Do what's called a DBCC shrink file. Shrink that file down to whatever's in that content. It won't let you shrink it below it, and then put it back in full recovery. So if it's not on my blog and I just can't recall right now, email me and I'll send you those steps to make sure you get those. Yes, sir.
On the recycle bin, so if we don't force delete some file on the recycle bin, does it go for the package in recycle bin?
So yes, I delete a document today. In 30 days, if I don't delete it, it's going to go to the recycle bin, and then it'll get toasted from there.
It will be there on the package list for 34 days.
No, it's 30 days total. So if I don't delete it, it actually temporarily ends up, I'd say it's a timer job, so I don't know what the time frame. It could be as simple as 2 hours. It'll hit the second stage recycle bin, and then it's gone. But there's a timer job that empties both of them. I can't remember what they're called. It's if you go down in the timer jobs, you'll see that it says recycle bin delete or purge or something like that. Okay. Other questions? Yes, sir.
With the model database, if when you set it up, you had it in full recovery, every database that gets created will get created. Does that setting go across?
Correct. Yeah. So if the model database, which is every time you create a new database, anytime in SQL Server, whether you do it from inside a SQL Server or SharePoint, there's a model database that's an instance of SQL Server. That's used as a Polaroid picture. They take a picture of that, and then they move that, and then they create your new database using that as a template. If that is set to full recovery, which it is by default, then all of your new databases will be in full recovery model, which is what you want. So anything you need to, and that's the session I did yesterday, and how we can tweak that to optimize that. Any other questions? Lunch, and we did make that minute up for lunch, so we should beat the devs. Yes, sir.
Oh, it's a general one. When
Yep.
should you use farm backup? I tend not to use farm backup. I just wonder what the best practice is. I tend to do SQL backup.
So the question is, when do I do a SharePoint farm backup versus SQL? Just as long as SQL's getting all the farm configuration instances, there's DNS information, there's like about 10 things in there that SQL databases aren't picking up. So you got to be, if you can find that list, and I don't think that I have that in a blog, but search to see what's not backed up. You'll be surprised. Alternate access mappings now are, sorry. But there's about half a dozen to a dozen things that aren't backed up if you do a SQL backup versus a farm configuration.
Once a month or how often they change?
Correct, exactly. Yes, sir.
How about the strategy during the upgrade to get such upgrade?
Strategy during the upgrade from 2010 to 13, you mean?
The recovery model, would you recommend looking to simple recovery model before you do the attach, because it's not quite the log file.
Okay, so the question, I believe the question is, if I'm going to upgrade 2010 to 2013, do I take my databases offline? The suggestion is put them in read-only in the 2010 world.
Simple recovery model.
Simple recovery model? Yeah, you could. So, what I would do is actually I'd put them in read-only, put them in simple recovery model, let a checkpoint process run, which I'll purge, then put them in read-only mode so no other updates come in, then copy the databases to the 2013 farm, and then apply them and put them back in their read-write. Okay. Yes?
If you use PowerShell, does that back up the database as well?
If you use PowerShell to back up the MDF to do a full backup, no. You're going to have the same problem whether using PowerShell or Central Admin, or SQL for that matter. It just doesn't do you have to issue, the bottom line, you have to issue the backup log command, or inside a Central Admin, or inside a SQL Management Studio, you have to back up that log. And that's the big piece that's missing. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Enjoy lunch.